In one of my recent videos, I talked about a creative photography technique that involves dramatically underexposing your images to create a look that has been made popular by high fashion photographer Henrik Purin. A few viewers kind of balked at the notion of deliberately adjusting exposure for artistic reasons and seemed to challenge the idea that not every image has to be a technically correct exposure. So this prompted me to make a video that explores the use of exposure as a creative tool as opposed to something that we think of just getting right. Obviously, it is important to learn the rules of exposure, but once you have done, I think there is so much room for creativity and artistic expression and the chance to really tell a story and use exposure to do that. So let's dive in. Firstly, I think we need to rewind a little bit and assess the idea of the correct exposure and where this came from. Since modern digital cameras have provided us with tools like histograms and being able to open up raw files and get an explicit look at how much detail is kept in the highlights and shadows, a lot of photographers have kind of gotten obsessed with these minutiae. With so much information, we can see exactly what has been captured and what hasn't. This leads to the temptation for many to try and balance everything out so every shadow and highlight detail is shown perfectly. Many photographers get really worried about clipping the highlights or protecting information in the shadows, and advice such as when shooting film, always expose for the shadows gets repeated as if it's the one true way to do things. While we definitely need these touch points and guides for a starting point, I'd argue that by religiously following them, photographers will end up creating images that run the risk of looking generic, or at least not be the most interesting they could be. Now, for anyone watching who is already preparing their counter argument, and I invite you to do so because this is simply just my opinion and you have the right to yours, I'd encourage you to go out and photograph a scene or subject and capture it with the correct exposure first, and then from there move on to underexpose and overexpose several stops and really look at the images and put aside the technical rules of it all and look at the image as an image and simply see for yourself what actually looks better. I invite you to take a look at how this can transform everything and provide unexpected compositional opportunities to lean into shadow for higher contrast or reduce the impact of shadows to create a more even, airy look. Now, as a second exercise, I would encourage you to ask yourself, is there a focal point of the image? Am I specifically trying to draw attention to something in the image? You can use exposure to your advantage here, and playing around with it will really bring that into focus or dull something else in the frame. So we should be thinking about exposure in that way and not just in this heavily technical way of trying to get everything right. Whether you are a working photographer or you are shooting personal projects, it's really nice to have your photography easily organized and able to share with potential collaborators and clients. I recently said goodbye Google Drive and started using a platform called PicDrop. I don't know about you, but I've never really been very happy with the usual photo delivery and storage systems. They're often clunky and don't present very well on the other end. PicDrop is a platform made by photographers for photographers. So it's considered all the parts of the process that go into image delivery, and it's made it sleek, seamless, and professional. With over 180,000 creatives using it to deliver and proof images effortlessly, it's the go-to time-saving tool for photographers working with others to bring exciting concepts to life. I'm so in love with the way my photography is presented at the other end for my client to view, and it's really the professional step up I was looking for when I'm growing my business. I love that others can mark up images and choose what they like best, and I think that's such a smart addition to make the proofing process simple and easy. If you are looking for a software solution designed specifically for photographers, then PicDrop is going to be game-changing for you. And the good news is you can try it for free for 2 whole months and experience the difference for yourself. Click the link in my description to redeem your 2 months of free PicDrop, or head to www.picdrop.com/go/Lucy Lumen. I think the reason most beautifully shot films look cinematic isn't because of anamorphic lenses, buttloads of bloom, fog and halation, or some sort of esoteric magic. I strongly believe that films that look truly cinematic are due to the expert, considered approach to exposure to draw attention to a particular subject in a scene, combined with the use of purposeful lighting to craft that to tell a story. I recently rewatched The Matrix, and I was a little bit taken aback by some of the exposures on Neo's face. This was actually a case where most of the exposure, which would have been on film, was set to expose for the shadows, as there are scenes where Keanu Reeves' face is almost blown out, but there is plenty of detail on the shadow side. I believe this was probably a very deliberate choice to complement the greenish, cold color tones of the film, and it means that in certain scenes, things like windows are quite overexposed. The cinematographer had to make an artistic choice to overexpose a stop or two to tell the story and set the mood, not just because it was the correct choice. Conversely, a lot of noir-style films are quite heavily underexposed, where there is virtually no detail left in the shadows. I feel like being more creative and considered artistically is fairly normalized in black and white photography. Exposing city scenes for the highlights, leaving a high contrast look is a very well-established black and white technique. But I'd argue much fewer photographers are willing to experiment when it comes to color photography. It's my impression that there is too much emphasis placed on an even exposure with the hope to maintain an evenness across shadows and details. And I think people need to make a choice. It's like exposure fence sitting, you know? So coming full circle back to Pureen, I think the reason his style works so well is because he is underexposing by 4 stops to really emphasize the product in harsh light that he wants to draw attention to. How it works is the product gets just enough exposure to catch your eye, and much of the superfluous content of the image is lost in the grain. It gives you an almost subliminal taste of what is being advertised, sparking curiosity and giving the viewer a motivation to look twice and find out more, even though 99.9% of us can't probably afford anything in a Pureen photo. I think what he does is really smart, and it is 100% going against the rules. Whether you like the look or not, you can apply this kind of creative thinking and technique to your personal or professional photography. I feel like this video has only scraped the surface of the topic, and it's definitely something that I am still exploring in my own photography. Over the years, I have really grown as a photographer and come to appreciate things like lighting and exposure and playing around with those things and really pushing the limits to see where I can go stylistically. So just to be clear, I am not saying that you can't go out and have a correctly exposed photo or strive for that in your photography. All I'm doing with this video and other videos I've done on the channel is try and push you to try something a little bit different and push the boundaries of what the rules really are. Because I think as photographers, we can get very bogged down with the techniques, and it doesn't allow for creativity and fun and exploring new ways to capture things. So don't be scared to get out there and clip your highlights or crush your shadows. I give you full permission. And as always, let me know below what you guys think, because in these videos where we do talk about technical aspects of photography, you guys always have really interesting insights, and I appreciate that. So drop any of them below.